Hey y'all, happy Tuesday. I hope y'all have had a good week so far. So today we are going to do another round of notes. This time we are actually going to be looking at the different religions in Southeast Asia and how they have influenced the history of the region and its people. So to start with, there are probably hundreds of different religions that we could talk about in Southeast Asia, but we are going to focus on the four major ones. And those four would be Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, and Christianity. These should all be familiar to you. We have talked about all four of these this year. Um, and this region is unique in that while none of these four were founded in Southeast Asia, they have all played a vital role in the region's history. So we will start with Buddhism. And a lot of this should be review. But if you remember, Buddhism was founded in India around 580 BC by a guy named Siddhartha. He began looking for enlightenment and soon reached a point of what he called nirvana, which is enlightenment, and that is when he changed his name to Buddha. He created what he called the Four Noble Truths to help people reach enlightenment the way he did. And those four were suffering and unhappiness were a part of life. Suffering comes from our desire for material stuff. People can overcome these desires and reach nirvana or enlightenment, and that people can use the Eightfold Path to help them do that. So here are the 8 steps of the Eightfold Path, if you remember those from when we talked about Buddhism. But we are actually going to focus on how Buddhism got to Southeast Asia. So, like we talked a minute ago, it started in India and it kind of spread through a couple different routes. The big one was via trade routes between India and Southeast Asia. If you remember way back when we talked about how a lot of things besides trade occur on trade routes. It's not just physical things being traded, it is cultural things. It is religious ideas in this case. So a lot goes on in these trade routes besides just the exchanging of money and goods and all that stuff. A lot of it is stuff you can't really put a price tag on. And religion is one of those things that, for a lot of people, you can't put a price on. And that is how Buddhism kind of spread from India to Southeast Asia. In particular, it's focused in a lot of mainland Southeast Asia. So you're talking Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, Myanmar, those countries up there in that part of Southeast Asia. And typically, Buddhist monks and Buddhist followers avoid getting too involved in politics. But in countries like Burma and Thailand, they are active participants. They are instrumental in the functioning of these countries, even though typically Buddhists like to stay out of worldly issues. In these countries, they have actually gotten into it more. And to give you an example, this is the Borobudur Buddhist temple in Indonesia. And there are hundreds of different temples throughout the region to Buddhism. This is one of the more famous ones, and it is in Indonesia. The next one we're going to talk about is Hinduism, and again, we've talked about this before, so it should be kind of familiar. It was also established in India, but it's considerably older. It also spread to Southeast Asia via trade routes from India. And it was actually the majority religion in Southeast Asia until Buddhism showed up and kind of slowly began pushing Hinduism out of the region. One of the reasons for this is that Buddhism did not require its followers to participate in the caste system. If you remember, the caste system was the very rigid social structure that developed in Hinduism and is found in India, where you were born into a category, you stayed in that category determined your job, who you could marry, who you could be friends with. It was a very rigid system. People had to follow it, and a lot of people, unsurprisingly, don't like this. And so Buddhism or Hinduism, because it follows the caste system, slowly began fading away in favor of Buddhism, which did not require people to follow the caste system. Um, an example of Hinduism in Southeast Asia is actually the complex known as Angkor Wat. It's a complex, but it was also a civilization in what is today Cambodia. It lasted from the 9th to the 11th centuries CE, and was a major power in the religion. The kings of this Angkor Wat civilization were called Deva Rahas, which translates roughly to God Kings. And the Angkor Wat created massive temples dedicated to themselves because they saw them as gods, and also to other Hindu gods, some of which these temples are still standing. And it was kind of right after the collapse of the Angkor Wat that Hinduism started slowly fading away, only to be replaced by Buddhism. And to give you an idea of the Angkor Wat complex in Cambodia, here is kind of a picture of the complex. It's one of the more famous Hindu temples, arguably, in the world, and it is in the modern day country of Cambodia. Another one is Islam. And if you remember, Islam started in the modern day country of Saudi Arabia. Oh, I guess I should point out that if you want to take notes over these, I put a note sheet on the beginning of the module. You do not have to follow it. You can use your own. We're kind of halfway through it, but it's there if you want it. I should have said at the beginning, but I will scatterbrained. So Islam started in Saudi Arabia around 600 CE, and it was where the Prophet Muhammad received a vision from God and soon began spreading a message from God across the Middle East and into portions of Europe, Africa, and eventually on into Asia. The odd one with this is no one is entirely sure how it got to Southeast Asia. There are a couple of theories. The big one would be, again, via trade routes, but there isn't a lot of evidence to show this. So we are not entirely sure how Islam got to Southeast Asia. It could just be through simple people talking about it. There are a couple of theories, but once it arrived in Southeast Asia, it quickly replaced both Hinduism and Buddhism in the island portion of Southeast Asia, particularly Indonesia. And one of the leading theories for this is that Islam as a religion allowed people to incorporate some of their own native religious rites or customs and things into Islam, which made it easier for these people to adopt Islam, knowing they could keep some of their old traditions, their old customs. Islam allows people to do that, and so it made it easier for Islam to be adopted in the island portion of Southeast Asia. Indonesia is actually, I think, the world's largest Muslim populated country in the world. I want to say like 95% of people in Indonesia are Muslim. And so Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world, bigger than Saudi Arabia, bigger than Iraq, Iran, and those other more common Middle Eastern countries we think of when we think of Islam. And to give you an example, this is Istiqlal Mosque in Jakarta, Indonesia. And the last one is Christianity, and it is actually minor religion in this part of the world. There are only two countries that have majority Christian countries, and those would be the Philippines and East Timor. Christianity was relatively late to the region. It didn't show up until the arrival of the Spanish in the 1500s, who colonized the Philippines and other nearby areas. So, up until colonization, Christianity wasn't a thing in this part of the world. And it hasn't really spread outside the Philippines, but in a big scale, but it can still be found throughout the region in smaller groups. And this is just to give you kind of a visual of the religious diversity in Southeast Asia, and it tells you over here what the colors stand for. And so let's look at, let's go Cambodia. So Cambodia has a very small Muslim population, and a vast majority of Cambodia is Buddhist. A more complicated one is Indonesia. About 10% of Indonesians would be considered Christian. The vast majority of the other ones, though, are Muslim. Probably one of the more diverse ones would be Singapore. Has about a 18% Christian population, 20% Muslim, good size unaffiliated, people who identify as other, Christian, traditional. And so you can kind of see the religious diversity that goes on in this region. So, to give you an idea of just how diverse the region is as far as religion goes, there's no one dominant religion unlike other places we've looked at where it's one of these four. It depends on which country you're in, which religion will be the dominant one. But that is actually all the notes we have for today. Tomorrow, I will have something else for you. But until then, if you all have any questions, let me know. I want to say about 15 days left of school. So we are almost at the end. So if you all have questions, be sure to let me know. But other than that, I hope you all have a good rest of your Tuesday. I will see you all tomorrow.